If it is the first time that you heard about our center, let me introduce you a little bit about our center and our services. The Center for Global Partnerships and Learning provides GSCP students a myriad of services ranging from publication support, access to the academic journal Scholarship Without Border, certificate programs, and other services such as the cultural celebrations, such as this month celebration, and other events such as workshops or info sessions, etc. And before we get started, I'd like to invite my friend, Reverend Charlotte Green, to make a prayer for our Women History Month and for all women in our communities, in our organizations and family.
Thank you, Suelen. Good evening. Would you pray with me? God, who is creator and wisdom, who spoke over the abyss and light and life became a reality, we gather this day and this month to celebrate women who you created and called to birth life, wisdom, beauty, and nurturing presence into the world. We come that we might learn, grow, and heal from the challenges, systems, and mindsets that hold us hostage to an image of women, not of your making. As we listen, learn, release, renew, and reaffirm our presence, our gifts, our lives, our goodness, and work in our families, communities, industries, institutions, and government. Restore the original image of wholeness, divine presence, and the gift of life we all possess and share. May the speakers, presenters, and events we gather in each week this month provide what we need to thrive and support one another in the work that we do as women. May it be so. Ashe. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Do you mind to share our slides for today? Okay, you can go to the agenda. So let me share with you our agenda for today. So first, I will introduce you to our Women History Month sessions. We have in total 9 sessions. And then I will share with you some statistics and information about women equality and empowerment. I will also introduce some concepts of the women empowerment principles and some of the practices that organizations and individuals are taking towards the women empowerment. And finally, I want it to be a safe space where we can discuss and share our own practices to empower other women in our organizations, in our communities, and in our family. So the next slide, please, Charlotte. Why empowerment and wellness? This is a completely different topic than last year. And when we talk about women empowerment, it consists of promoting women's sense of self-worth, ability to determine their own choices, and right to influence social change for themselves and for others. The well-being and socioeconomic advancement of families, communities, and nations depend on women empowerment. So we women can achieve our greatest potential when we have safe environments, when we have satisfaction in what we do and acceptance of who we are. And women's wellness is an important piece in the women's empowerment. Women touch so many lives. We touch so many lives. Our partners, our kids, our parents, our co-workers, and friends, all of them look for our love, our support, or simply they want our presence in their lives. So wellness do a great deal in this, in supporting us this task, because it helps us to feel well, both physically and mentally. So wellness is especially important in this moment of post-pandemic, because during the pandemic, we saw several thousand million of women going through burnout and leaving their jobs because of the work and the hardship they have to confront to take care of their houses, their kids, and their families. So now that we see this slight recovery of the gap created during the pandemic, it's time to support all women. And we are going to do that through this series of events. We have in total 9 events. Starting today. Today, I am introducing 2 our events, but I will also talk a little bit about women empowerment. Then on March 8th, we will have Tisa Richards. She will talk about learning and practicing resilience, the secret of unshakable leaders. Then we have Kaylee, who is also in the session today. She will be doing a personal development and meditation for women. On the 10th, we will have Dr. Carmen Estrada Shea on March 14. It will be a distinguished lecture with the topic of the role of women in a changing society. It will be both face-to-face and virtual. Then we will have a panel of students on the 17th. With the topic of elevating voices of women from all communities. Dr. Asia will talk about mindset and imposterism on the 20th. Then Dr. Heather will talk to us about harness the power of authentic self-promotion on the 23rd. And we will finish with Yas, who will talk about creating unique career stories. Shaletta will share with you all the link for those events. And one thing that I would like to emphasize before I go into our some of our statistics here is that all these events, they have the purpose to bring to you all some tools, inspiration, and also techniques of empowerment and wellness. So our purpose is that those sessions really help you to leverage your career, your success, your leadership, or even your collaboration with other women. So now we can start. Let's shift a little bit the gears here. So let me show you a few information and statistics about the current situation of women's equality and empowerment. First, I will talk about the situation in the globe, and then I will talk about the situation in North America and the United States. So every year, the World Economic Forum publishes their Global Gender Gap Report and Index. It's very nice. I've been following it since 2016. And in 2022, the global gender gap has been closed by 68%. At the current rate of progress, it will take 132 years to reach full parity between men and women. What does that mean? That means when we close at 68%, it means that we have still 32% to complete this parity between men and women. So we had an improvement of 6 years from 2021 because we had this decrease at this rate during the pandemic. And now we have, so we had this gap was in 138 years. So we have reduced it in 6 years. Let's go to the next slide, Shaletta. Okay, so This second chart here displays the state of global gender gap in 2022. How do we read this index? So the index goes from 0 to 100%, or depending on the graph that I will show to you, 0 to 1. And the closer we are to 100%, the more equity between men and women is achieved. So this global gender gap index, which is in the black bar, first bar in this chart, it's not really black, it's a dark blue, is composed, it consists of 4 pillars represented by the following blue bars. So in the first pillar, we have the economic participation and opportunity, and it includes labor force participation, wage equality for similar work, estimated income, senior officials and managers, professional and technical workers, access to finance, leadership, and others factors. The second pillar is about educational attainment, and it includes rates of literacy, enrollment in primary, secondary, and tertiary education, and skills in different domains such as engineering or arts or business, laws, etc. The third pillar is health and survival. It includes birth and mortality rates, life expectancy, and gender violence. And the last pillar is political empowerment, which includes the number of women in parliament in each country, women in ministerial position, the ratio of female and male heads of states, and also civil and political freedom. So across 146 countries covered by the 2022 index, the health and survival gender gap has closed by 95%, educational attainment by 94%, economic participation and opportunities by 60%, and political empowerment by only 22%. So the lowest 2 pillars here are economic participation and political empowerment. And those are the ones that relate to the women empowerment that we are proposing in our discussions. How can we leverage more women, empower more women to take more, to take a big chunk in the economic participation, in leadership position, in the political arena? Can you go to the next slide, Shaletta, please? So what else do statistics tell us about women's current situation around the globe? So these are some of the statistics shown by the United Nations and the World Vision Organization that preoccupy us a lot. At least it preoccupies a lot myself. I selected only these 3, but they have a lot of other information. I strongly suggest that you read the full report if you have time and if it is one of the subjects that interests you. So the first rate, the first stats here is about marriage. 750 million women and girls were married before the age of 18. And most of these women marry very early, not because of their willingness or their preferences. It's not their choice, but it's because of tradition, religion, or a means to survive in a country where, for example, women don't have space. The second statistics is about violence against women. So 20% of women experienced any kind of physical or sexual violence during the last 12 months. Most of this violence is experienced at home by husbands, parents, relatives. And this is very scary because we should feel safe when we are at our homes, but that's not the reality of several women. And of course, this is the big chunk of this, but we also have violence experience at work or other places as well. The 30 statistics here is the overall representation in political offices. It's lower than 24%. So the question is, if we do not have a women's voice in the political offices, in the political arena, how can we have the strength to fight for new policies and for our rights? That's very difficult. So I also brought to you some statistics about North America and in the United States. So when we analyze specifically our region, North America is the most advanced region in terms of closing the gender gap as a whole. The average score for the region is 76.9%, which reduces the number of years it takes to about 59 years. It will also reduce from last year to this year, but it remains a long time. At this rate, maybe, maybe we can dream about our daughters, our granddaughters or grand-granddaughters living in a more equitable environment, and in an environment that they will feel more empowered. Continuing on the United States stats, this is the state of the US gender gap. So in the United States, the gender gap of health is closed by 97%, educational attainment by 99%, economic participation is only 78%, so we have a big opportunity here, and political empowerment by 33%. One question that you might be thinking is, okay, is the situation about women the same when we compare different ethnicities? So this specific report doesn't break down ethnicities, but I do suggest another report that is called Women in Workplace, that is published every year since 2018 from McKinsey and Lean Institute. And they focus on the leadership participation of women or women in the workplace as well as a whole. And in this report, what we see is that women in some ethnicities, such as women of color or Asian American women, they face much more barriers than white women in this market and in the leadership pipeline. They're also paid less, et cetera, et cetera. So the big question here is, the key question here is, how do we close the economic and political gaps? So please share your thoughts and comments in the chat. And later on, we will discuss more in depth this. When I open to discussion, we will have about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more to discuss that in the end of this presentation. Okay, so there are several actions that we can put in practice. I'd like to start by focus on the women empowerment principles. This is an initiative from the United Nations Global Compact and the United Nations Women. And it's been used to empower women in the marketplace, in workplace, and several communities by thousands of companies nowadays. And those principles were created in collaboration with a lot of other institutions and companies, etc. So the principles consist of 7 specific items The first one is to create a high level of corporate leadership for gender equality. The second is to treat all people fairly at work, respecting and supporting non-discrimination and human rights. Ensure health, well-being, and safety of all workers, whether male or female. The number 4 is to promote education, training, and professional development for women. This is very important. Sometimes women go to a marketplace or to they join an organization and they didn't have opportunities as men have to training or study or exposure to the labor market. So it's very important to have these opportunities. The number 5 is implement supply chain, market practices, and enterprise development that empower women. Number 6 is to champion equality through community initiatives and advocacy. Advocacy is very, very important. And the last one is to measure and report publicly on progress to create gender equality. So those principles were converted also in a tool to measure the empowerment of women in organization. And when the UN created this tool, they did so in partnership with more than 170 companies and in partnership with multilateral investment funds as well. So this is nowadays a very consistent one, and it's being used by several big corporations nowadays. So in summary, these principles and tools guide several institutions to increase women empowerment. So I would like to propose for us to have a look at some of the cases. I selected some cases in nonprofit organization and for-profit organization. So the first case that I would like to share with you is this case about supporting girls like Marie in Sudan to achieve their educational goals and their dreams about a better future. This is a case of the World Vision organization. And well, Marie was sponsored through the World Vision organization. In fact, her community was sponsored. When finishing school, when she was finishing school, she was the only girl surrounded by 19 boys. But she was determined and wanted to prove that girls could do it also. So she was the first woman with a certificate in her family. In South Sudan, girls who completed all the education are the exception. Due to conflict and poverty, only 30% of all children who are of school age are currently studying in Sudan. And gender equality is also a factor, and only 1 in every 7 girls, only 18%, finish primary school in Sudan. So for her, it was really a big achievement to have her certificate. So with the action of the World Vision to support education in Marie's community, with the financial support and logistic support, she was able to attend the school and finish her studies. The second example, if you wanted to, so the second case is about mentoring other women in vulnerability through voluntary work, such as here I bring 2 examples from nonprofit organization in Brazil. The first one is Nós por Ela. So we're for other women, and the Instituto Reciclar is another institution here in Brazil. So these nonprofit organizations, they offer mentoring programs I am one of the volunteers there in those programs. I've been participating in over 10 cycles now of mentorship. One special case for me was when I mentored a Black young woman, very intelligent, from a poor community, a vulnerable community in Rio de Janeiro. She was really, how could I say, she was really smart. She was fascinating. She was a fascinated human being, but she was always holding her back because of the criticisms and difficulties she had in life. From organizations she worked at, from her family, her father was very hard on her, and this kind of situation. By the way, she was an English teacher in the community. This woman, she had a dream to live abroad and have a better life. This is very common in countries like Brazil, in developing countries, especially in communities in vulnerability. And we started to work together. We worked on her career plan, on her curriculum. We had, for example, mock interviews. We planned every single step of her journey to achieve her dream. She overcome a lot of her fears. She was able to hear some criticism in a good manner and put it to work in her favor and a lot of things. So in conclusion, she got it. She got to that position. And last time I talked to her from time to time. I talked to her in December last year. She was living in Dublin. She was very happy. She was feeling empowered. She was, you know, very, very well. And most important for me is that she believed in herself more than ever. That was the most important thing, because when you start to believe in yourself and your potential, you can achieve incredible things. So next case is also is also another case that I am participating directly. The third case is about developing these unique programs for increasing the number of women in leadership pipeline, like this institution, Mulheres em Operações, or translating to English, Women in Operation Association. It's a non-profit organization also in Brazil. I am one of their directors now. We developed a program for organization in which we prepare senior leadership to train and to mentor other women to assume leadership positions. This program was planned to shift a leader's mindset and approaches toward a more inclusive approach to women. And the last case is a case about closing the pay gap between women and men, like in Starbucks. This is a case from the UN Women and the International Labor Organization. So what happened was in March 2018, Starbucks announced that they had achieved 100% of pay parity for employees of all genders and races in the United States. It was a combination of a 10-year efforts. It's a long time. And they shared some of the policies and principles that they implemented. And they are very interesting policies. For example, they stopped asking candidates about their salary history. And this is very cool because when you stop and think about that, if you base your the wage that you will offer on previous history of salary, and women are consistently paid less, on average 15% less than men in the United States, you will not stop that vicious cycle. So this was something very interesting. They remove any gaps on promotional increase. They implemented a policy of transparency about wages. They reported annually on pay equity progress across organization. They conducted comprehensive analysis of comprehension. Another interesting thing they did was they provide access to a pay calculator with transparent standards and calculation methods. And they adopted a policy of no retaliation or discrimination against employees who ask to discuss about their wages. So these and other policies they implemented. So nowadays, Starbucks has also committed to encourage other multinational companies to work towards pay equity. They are sharing their knowledge and tools through other organizations. And well, in summary, if we can go to the next slide, Shaletta. So in summary, any individual or organization plays important roles in empowering women. That's very important. So I brought here my 5 top ways to empower women based on my personal experience. My personal experience in the private sector and also in the nonprofit sector. So those are my 5 top things here. The first one is mentorship and training for women in lower positions or vulnerability. So the voluntary work that I mentioned before in some of the institutions in Brazil, those are really important. If you have like 1 hour per week, 2 hours per week, whatever you have, if you can put that to work and to help other women, it will make a difference in their lives. The second one is hire and promote women in the workplace. For example, when I was director in a company there in Brazil, I was in charge of over 200 employees, and we have 10 managers at that time and other coordinators, but 50% of my managers were women in a male-dominated industry. So this is very important because we women, we don't have this future for male or for not including women in our organization. So we are more willing to work in diverse environment with people that are different than us. This is very important. The third one is to help women to build allyship and meaningful networks. This is very important because we will need that. We will need allyship and network when things get tough, and they do get tough in some moment of our lives. The fourth one is elevate your voice wisely and firmly. And it works in conjunctions with the allyship and network for me. And let me explain why. In some moment of your career, you will have a boss that will say that because you are a woman, you do not deserve to, get in a promotion, or because you are a married woman or with kids, you can't take over more responsibility and so on. And usually these conversations are difficult conversations that you have alone with your boss. So if you don't use your voice wisely and firmly, and you speak aggressively, maybe everything will be against you. So this is the moment that you have to use your voice, for example, throughout your network or allyship, because you needed to make it something happen. You don't need, you can't be quiet, but you don't need to expose yourself in a way that you will lose the long run. So you need to be smart and use your voice smart in this sense. And the last one is, if you can, just support a girl, support a woman in need. If you can, help other people always. Everything you give, this is my belief, everything you give, the universe gives you back in double in terms of love, graces in your life, etc. So this is something that is very important for me, and that makes a difference. You should be helping other women and other girls. So when we move to what organizations can do, I prepared these 6 initiatives here. Most of them are based on the UN Women and the International Labor Organizations, but there is one of them that I suggested myself because I really believe in that, especially after the work I've been doing with the nonprofit. So the first one is companies can empower women by achieving equal pay for work of equal value. So this is the example of Starbucks. They can also empower women by preventing and ending violence or harassment at work. It's paramount, it's essential to provide a safe environment to everyone. The number 3 is to promote work-family balance and equal sharing of childcare responsibilities. The next one is to foster women in business and management. The number 5 is to build a future of work that works for both women and men. And the last one, this is my contribution here, is a personal contribution. Companies empower women by training leadership and employees towards a more diverse practice. And that's because policies alone do not work. If you can change the mindset and the heart of people within the organization, they will continue to impose barriers to gender if you don't change their mindset. So that's my last slide of the presentation. Now, what I would like to do is to open the floor for discussion. I see that we have a lot of comments in the chat. And my proposal for you is for us, with all our contributions here, is to build a list of best practices together using our personal stories. So what I wanted to ask you is to share how are you empowering women in your organization, community, and family?
Hi, Suelen. I will contribute. Thank you so much. That was a lovely presentation. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate the data. I appreciate the state of women's empowerment and wellness from a global to a local perspective. So thank you for that. And I especially appreciate your personal take on this. I work for a company that is minority based. So we serve the homeless youth that are marginalized and youth that are disenfranchised. And I see that a lot of the workforce development that we provide are targeted towards men, construction, although it is equal opportunity, but these tasks tend to be more attractive to men than women. So in my part, I've sought out grants for hospitality development, so careers in hospitality and lodging that can create pathways for youth in South Central LA. And then the other one is through financial education and financial literacy services. So it may not come from the top in career development, but it could also come in workforce development. And within the organization, I think I am providing support to women by giving them confidence. You know, a lot of our project or program directors are women, and maybe perhaps English is not their first language. So normalizing the accent, people have accent, and that's just what it means to be a person. Speak it. You don't have to apologize for your grammar. This is not an academic career that you are pursuing. You're in programs. We're helping real people, real lives, changing, transforming people every day. Just giving them permission to be their true selves. And then the third one is allowing people the freedom to be who they are. Are they mothers? Are they sisters? Are they caring for aging parents? You know, if we're having a meeting, I ask this, is this a convenient time for everything that's going on in your lives? So, like, for example, we're pushing a big meeting, and one gal was saying, well, my daughter is going to have a root canal actually that day, but I can be there for you. And I said, no, you're not going to be there for us, because your concern is going to be for your daughter. We don't know what that outcome might be. And so why don't we postpone it? And so I think empowering women to be women, because we're nurturing, we're loving, we're caring, and we need to do that as women. I think those are some things that might help to empowerment, women's empowerment and wellness.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. The permission to be themselves is amazing, and giving them confidence. So I've been there, I'm not American. I have a lot of accent. I've been there, and to reach this level of confidence is really hard, and having a supportive group of people, or people supporting you whatever you are, this is very good. I felt that way in our cohort, with people supporting me, and even in the center here, for example, English is not my first language, but when someone believe in me and ask me to do something like that here, speak with you all, with all my, vulnerabilities and such, I feel empowered. I feel like people are, trust me to do that. Another thing that you talked about, and I would like to elaborate a little bit more, that is very important, is financial education. That's so important. What I've seen, I mentioned a couple of organizations that I've worked with as volunteer. In those first one, as a mentor, we were receiving women in the beginning of their careers or in more junior positions and such. And that was a really hard task for them. Constantly, we had to provide some workshops and such about the financial education, financial plan, personal finances, etc. This is very good. I like that you brought that up. That's really important. Thank you so much for sharing.
Kaylee, you've got your hand up.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Suelen, for sharing. And I just wanted to add to the discussion and say it's something that I think is coming through here, is taking advantage of the circles that you're already in and the people who are close to you. In the example that Alma gave, of someone calling in and saying, well, my son actually is going to have, or my daughter is going to have a root canal. And it's that, situation where you make the decision to create space for that woman, that I think those seemingly small decisions in aggregate really make a big change. And in that example, it's a circle that she's already in, not that we shouldn't be reaching beyond. We always should, but I think of our families, I think of our sisters, you know, our nieces, our aunts, our moms, and the people that we work with, that it's always an opportunity there to create change as well and to implement those strategies that Suelen put forth in her PowerPoint. So I just wanted to add that too. It's kind of a, when I feel overwhelmed by the need, I feel empowered to be able to affect change in my immediate circles. So I just wanted to add that in. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kaylee. Yeah, that's very important. That's so important. And yeah, shall I go ahead?
Go ahead, Jill. I just want to acknowledge some of the things that are in the chat.
Sure. Yeah.
That have been there. Of course, Kaylee talks about starting at a younger age, you know, breaking down barriers and stereotypes. Patty brings up creating a culture that advocates for women and supporting their families is important because of the complex issues in our culture. And I think one of the things that, you know, in bringing that up is that we fight a very embedded notion that women were never seen as working outside of the home and being property. And whether or not we agree with that is irrelevant. It is still part of the landscape of who we are and where we are, and the echoes that we continue to hear that often pull us backwards instead of moving us forward. This very narrow notion of what family is and what it looks like, and the role women play and what it looks like. And then how that gets differentiated across culture and class. We don't talk about class in this country, but class plays a major role in the way in which we understand how women operate, how women are supported or not supported, what the expectations are or not. And so when you begin looking at all of those things, part of the challenge is us reimagining the narrative around who women are and what women are about in this country. And it really does start at home. And it starts with, we are equal partners in all that we do, right? And that we all contribute to the landscape of having a well-established home, a well-established community, and that it's not women bearing the brunt of everything, but it's us doing this together. And the more we begin changing the narrative at that level, the more we begin to change activity and behavior around how women are seen, but how they're able to have agency. It's just been here within the last, 50 years that women have had some agency over their own bodies, their own activity and what they do and how they do it and when they do it and where they go. And that's still kind of questionable. So when we're talking about these arcs of empowering women, part of it is changing the national story. And it starts with changing the story at a personal level.
Yeah. Can I add to that, to a point that you mentioned, and Kaylee and Gisela as well in the chat? What I think, when I think about solutions for that, and focusing on the youth, it reminds me of some of the work, for example, that Ama mentioned about the organization she works with the youth. So supporting these people specifically in all communities, and also working, it's a different work that we have to have within organizations, within institutions, because as Giselle mentioned, that we have these stereotypes and we needed to change. Again, Charlotta and I had this discussion before, change mindset and hearts, because we tend to judge people just because they are younger than us. And this is very hard. Most of the barriers are imposed by our beliefs. So they don't dress like us, and then we judge them because of the clothes they put on. They don't speak like us, then we judge them just because they use other, word choices. and so on. So how can we train ourselves, our community to do that? This is the important piece for me. Shaletta, there is also another comment in the chat. Patty mentioned, made some comments over us. Patty, do you want to share a little bit your thoughts on that?
Well, I was also just looking at Maria Brame's comments about having her experiences, because this is something I remember. There was one job I took, and literally the HR person started chiding me, saying, well, you really don't have time to have this job because you have 6 kids at home, and so really, shouldn't you just be at home with them rather than empowering me to do what I had felt called to do? And I hope that it's getting better for people. I think it depends on what kind of field you're in. It depends on the cultures. And in this particular culture, it was a culture where women in leadership were really not very valued. And so I was never groomed for leadership. In fact, I was often ignored, even when I had more information than most of the other people in the room. But it's just, it can happen that way. But I think so many times we begin to internalize, like Charlotta was saying, we begin to internalize those voices and these expectations that as women, we're expected to lay down our lives for our children, for our families, and that when things get rough and something has to give, oftentimes women quietly make that choice before they even really explore what other options there might be that might make it a win-win, where she doesn't have to sacrifice what she feels called to do because of family dynamics or needs. But it's so tricky and it's so hard. And I just appreciate just even these chances to have these conversations, because it's a hard conversation to have, especially if you're not the one in power. And if you say too much about your home situation, like what Amma was saying, at least the workers had felt like they could say something, because so many times, I don't know if I would have said that. I would have been texting my husband saying, well, could you handle that root canal? Because it looks like I've got a work thing. It's so tricky. I think also Giselle had said something as well that was really powerful that I think would be good to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Patty. And when I was listening to what you were sharing about we women making sacrifices, this is something very interesting that appeared in this year report for women in workplace from McKinsey and Lean. And what they say is women are more willing to sacrifice things for diversity, inclusion, for those practices. And these sometimes are making women feel overwhelmed. And sometimes there are women that are almost quitting or giving up the job because they can't fight against this system. So the question is, should they stop sacrificing, or should we try to change the organizational mindset? If you ask me, I will go for the second option, because of course we needed to change it, right? And the change doesn't happen, overnight. We needed to, do incremental changes, but it's a very hard and tough journey for us. Yeah, that's nicely said. Yeah, Dr. Brahmi.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, these conversations are so important and so good. And one thing that I've talked to so many students here at Pepperdine who are women with young children who feel worried that they're being neglectful and so forth. And those messages come from all different kinds of places. Maybe they're parents who think they should be home with our kids, or as in my case, some of my colleagues in my program that thought I should have waited till the kids were older and so forth. But one message that I think is so important, especially for our children, is that within a family environment, we can make this work, and it's good for everyone when women are feel made to feel good and permitted to pursue their dreams. It's good for the kids to see that that can happen. It's incredibly important that young children see that you can make these things work within a family. And sometimes the issues are not have real, and I think very often they have to do with whoever the critic is with their issues, not at all, right? I had a student whose mother had given up her educational path because she got pregnant, and so she didn't think that her daughter then should pursue an advanced degree while she had a young daughter herself. And so, it's very, very complicated, but it is just so enormously important that children see how good it is for everyone when women are allowed to pursue their dreams and advance and feel good about all that. It's just good for everyone. Yeah, so thank you. Just beautiful comments in the chat and really amazing conversation.
Yeah, that's well said, Dr. Brahmi, and recognize. Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else would like to share or add any other comment? I know we are reaching our proposed time here, but I just wanted to give you all opportunity to share your practices if you like.
I think one of the things that I'm learning is sometimes we as women are really harsh and critical, not just of ourselves, but other women and their choices. Particularly if they've been offered choices that we don't have or haven't had. And so I think it's always important for us to be aware and mindful of how we engage and support one another based on our own experiences, our own lack of experiences, and strive to be as gracious with ourselves and with one another. Because all of our circumstances are different. And so the goal is to make the world a better place by helping each other, not causing more harm. We're already struggling in the gender space with how men see us and how men understand us. But we've also taken on that mantle sometimes and become just like men in the way in which we treat one another. And so I think it's important as we're thinking through what it means to provide support, to encourage, to provide healthy spaces, to create healthy family. All of those things start with the way in which we embrace and love ourselves and encourage ourselves, and then the way in which we then do that for others.
I always love your comments, Charlotta. Yeah. Oh, Portia also shared a comment here in the chat.
Yeah, why don't we take the time and read this one? Patty, an ex-coworker of mine, had an experience where when she had a baby and was preparing to return to to work, the vice president contacted her to consider taking a different position that was fully remote within the parent company. Now my coworker had prepared and had her support system in place to care for her baby while in the office so she could return. Although a remote job was ideal for her situation and it paid more, she didn't feel empowered by the offer. She felt she was being pushed out because they wanted certain people to work for this company. And she was a woman herself. It's important to what Suelen stated that when women are in a position of leadership, how we should empower and uplift women rather than tear them down or feel less than. That was how my ex-coworker felt. Yeah. Portia, thank you for that. Sometimes those options that we're given sound like they're really good, and yet they don't feel very good. Sometimes they negate the very thing that we're seeking to try. And sometimes even with people's best intentions, the impact misses the mark. And so it's about intention and impact.
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
Nope, you're fine.
Absolutely. And it was, and in her case, I think that because the vice president was a woman herself, who was a mother herself, it was as if she didn't, the way that she offered this, and I put in air quotes, opportunity, she didn't feel empowered that it was something that was coming from a good place or a supportive place, because she was having a new, she did have a newborn at home, for her to be in a better position to work remote. Instead, she felt very like she was being pushed out, that she didn't, she had a support system in place and she was prepared to come back to work, but that wasn't even a consideration. It was just pushing her to this other position. So I think that that's why it's so important with what Suelen said, when we are women in leadership, how important it is to reach our hand down, to uplift other women, to, empower them and make them feel comfortable and confident that they can too rise above. So I just wanted to share that.
That's an incredible example. And also the basics of it, the basics of human relationship, right, Portia? Why don't they ask her what is it that she would like for her career?
Exactly. It was never a question, because when it actually was, when we found out as, her coworkers and our boss at our current company, they never even came to him or said anything about it. So it felt like it was done very, very sneaky. Like it didn't seem like it came from a good place, and that they were trying to push her out of that specific company to go to a different one, enticing her with this remote work and being paid a little more. And so it's just not, there's a lot of work to do, in companies, but also between women, women just supporting women and being, an advocate for each other. So I think that there's still a lot of work to be done there as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for that, Portia. Shaletta, I know that we are over 5 minutes, but I do want to recognize what Cheryl put there. Maybe it could be the last topic of our discussion here.
Yes.
I think it's so important. I totally agree with Charlotta. Unfortunately, some of the toughest behavior comes from other women in leadership. Women who had made critical sacrifices, working extremely long hours, only seeing their children for a minimal amount of time, often think other women should do the same. So, yeah, that's so true. Any thoughts about that, Shaletta?
No, I really do think that this whole notion of freedom and choice is something that we have to be willing to stand in for all people, not just some. And that there are women who make the choice to sacrifice and don't spend time with children, but there are some who choose to stay at home. Whatever choice you get to make, it's not up to us then to like judge that choice, or for people who've made those choices to judge other people's choices. It's really to be okay with the choices that human beings make about their lives, and being okay that we all have to make different choices for our own circumstances.
Yeah, that's so true. And I've been in those positions, both the one that I work at, like 36 hours straight to get things done. And I've been also in the position that I decided it wasn't the path that I would like to continue my life anymore. I really wanted to spend more time with my family, etc. And the truth is, this was also a learning process for me, to giving me permission to behave in another way. So sometimes what I see from that scenario is that we kind of put us in this prison, this, mental prison of behaving in a certain way. And it's very hard for us to do that. And it's very easy when you are doing that to yourself to do that with other people. So yeah, that's really hard. And I recognize my old self being, in that position in a moment of my career. Thanks God I'm not there anymore. But I was there, unfortunately. Or fortunately, because I learned, right?
Well, Suelen, we want to thank you for giving your time and your expertise to us for this evening and for spearheading the rest of this month. And so we want to thank everyone for being here with us, for giving us some time and going a little bit over, for all of your comments, and for continuing to support the work of the center, where our goal is to elevate the voices of our students and of women. So we pray that something that was said here tonight inspired, encouraged, gave you permission to stand in your truth and to do what it is you need to do as a woman, that also to empower other women to go and do likewise. We look forward to you joining us for the rest of our events this month. And we hope that each one is something that you can take away, some kind of key learning that you can use now in your work and in your studies and in your research. So we bid you blessings as we end tonight. And thank you again for being here. And thanks again to our lovely Suelen for her presentation.
Thank you all for being here tonight. And Patty, yes, most of the events will be recorded. I'm not sure about Dr. Carmen Estrada Shea, but if you can't be in person, you can attend online for that event. Yeah. Thank you all. Have a lovely night. Thank you for being here, for supporting us. And I hope to see you in our other events.